Hey everybody, this is Perry with Premier Mirrorshine in New York, and I'm going to do another little video. I say little, it's probably going to be 35 minutes plus by the time everything's said and done. But today I wanted to go over drives. Now, the videos that I'm doing right now, just because I'm trying to get used to editing and trying to piece stuff together and stuff, they're not going to be super in-depth. As I get more comfortable with things, I will probably go more in depth with live time, sanding and polishing and stuff, so that people can kind of see things a little bit better. But for the sake of not spending hours later this evening editing everything out, I'm going to do a lot of time-lapse stuff for right now. So the wheel that I'm about to show you, I've just done my pass with 120, which is what I'm starting this wheel off on. And I'm going to turn the camera around and show you. But for those getting into the metal polishing stuff real quick, one of the things that you do want to do is invest in a respirator of some kind. Right now I'm wearing just a regular painter's mask with 3M painter's mask with particulate filters. You can see that my face is clean, my hands, my headset, that is most definitely not. Like, I am not. I'm covered in dust. Like, 120, when you start sanding down real low, you get a lot of heavy aluminum particles. You do not want to be breathing that stuff in whatsoever. What you'll see in some of my videos, and I'm not going to say that you should do this, but it's what I do because it's more comfortable for me than trying to breathe in a mask all the time. So what you'll see me do is, like, when I go into my the actual polishing stages, not necessarily my cut, because the cut is still stirring up a lot of dust that you have on the surface from your sanding, and you get a lot of heavy compound. But like my finishing steps, you'll see me sometimes take my mask off. It depends on the temperature that I'm working in. So for right now, I'm going to show you this wheel so that you can see. So basically what I'm doing is I'm running my Inox, my DeWalt Inox. I've got a 5-inch semi-flexible, I believe, yeah, it's an SGCB backing plate that I got off Amazon. They're pretty cheap and they work really well for me. And then sometimes what I'll do is I'll throw a interface pad, little interface pad on there, which gives you a lot more contour. The interface pad will squish around like the surfaces on the wheels and stuff. But for what I'm working on with these wheels, so for starters, on the lip, I have, well, normally it would be right here, because there's your date stamp information. So normally right here is the Alcoa triangle sticker, and right here is a little round sticker that they put on. So I take 180 and I skim the outer lip. For starters, it gets the majority of the pits right out on the outer lip. These wheels are not going to be a show finish. They're going on trailers, so the owner doesn't need them pitless. So I'm not spending a pile of time on them. You can see right here, like, these pits will get smaller as I go up in grit because I'm still removing material, but I'm not going to chase them down with my 120 any more than that. Same with the back wall around the lug nuts. These are not going on anything fancy. The owner just wants them cleaned up. And I believe, if I look at the date stamp, they are 2015s. So 10 years old. Run New York Salt. And they've kept them pretty clean. They're not in horrible shape. But what I do is I start with my sander on the back wall, and I run in here, and I go up into this well, into this crease right here with my sandpaper. So I basically am doing 2 to 3 passes, essentially, or 2 to 3 sections. So I have this section down here where I'm getting the bottom part of the lug nut ring cleaned up. Then I have an outer part that kind of cleans that area up, and then I push it up into this crease on the wheel, and that cleans up the pitting that's on that ring. Now, then I come back out, and I always work, when I do drive wheels like this, I always work from my inside out. Personally, some people will work from the outside in. People have different ways of doing it. My thought is, if I'm in here, where's my cord? And on a 22.5, you're very limited on space. So I can't exactly just pick my cord up out of the way without potentially damaging it. So you can see the cord is actually rubbing right on that lip, and I don't want that. So I've gotten in the habit of working from the outside, or from the inside out, and then that way I'm removing, as I work out, I'm removing any possible marring that I could be creating on my way out. I do this for the sanding steps, and I do this for my polishing steps. So when you're watching my videos on when I do drive wheels, you will pretty much see me keep the same routine every single time. It's a system that I've gotten in the habit of doing. Other people do it different, but this is what works for me. And it's just kind of become like a monotonous thing for me at this point. So you'll see me do that. So what I do is I go out, inside out. I come out here, I stuff it down in the water well and skim down the pits in the water well a bit. Then I come out here and I get the main face of the wheel, and then I come out here to the lip and I get my lip. So I'm leaving this, and you can see I'm leaving this little spot right here. This is all just 120. So now I'm getting ready to switch to 320, and I'll time lapse my 320 so you can see. But now I am going to do in between my holes to clean them up and start getting them sanded out. I'm gonna blend into my face, and then I'm gonna come back out and I'm gonna start doing water well, ridge, face of the wheel here on the barrel, outside edge, lip, and then I come out here and I do the bead area last as I'm working my way back out of the wheel. And then I repeat that step, or I repeat that process with 600 and then 800 also on the rotary. The difference is when I go to 800, then I put on the interface pad that I showed you before. The interface pad goes on the Inox for my 800. It kind of helps smooth everything out as a final pass. And then what I do is I take my 800 that I used on my rotary, because typically you'll only burn out the outside edge when you're running a pad like this, a backing plate like this. You'll usually only burn out the outside edge working on stuff like this. So what I do is I take my 800 sheets and then put them on my DA and burn them out on my DA. And what I'm doing is I'm gonna hit this area right here to smooth out the ridges right here that I'm gonna get from sanding in this area. And then I come out and I do this portion of the wheel with the DA. And that's it. Everything else, like this area right here and this, is all left rotary. So that's a synopsis of what I'm going to be doing. I may take a break here and there and switch back and forth from time lapse to show you things, but other than that, I'm going to switch it over to time lapse now, and we're going to go to town and see in a shop that's 75 degrees, see just how long it takes to get this sucker done. All right, so quick break after doing, we've done 120, 320, and 600, all on the rotary with no interface pad. So you can see that the sanding itself looks pretty smooth. I don't have waves, there's no divots in the lip anywhere. I don't have divots in the back wall anywhere. And you can see, if you followed along with the video before, you know, the time lapse, you could see I was working in here, in between the holes, and I would do 3 passes and then come up along the top and do 3 passes and up along the top there. And that was getting in this water well edge right in here cleaned up, along with the bottom edges of the holes. And then I was coming to the center and I did my 2 or 3 passes in the center to go over the lug nut holes, come up into the top here and do right here from this side. And then I come back down here and you can see this line right here. I was holding the sander like this and letting the wheel spin this way, and it was cleaning up all in here, because what happens is when you're going this way with your sanding between the holes, you're creating these there's little gouges that happen where you're stopping. When you come up and stop and go back down, there's a little gouge that happens right in there. And I think I got all mine out, so I wouldn't even really be able to show you. But I basically do 2 passes. So I hold the grinder way down low so that the backing plate is pretty much in the water well. And then I come up and I hit the top edge of this crease here, and the sandpaper goes up into that lip a little bit. So I do down below and then up on top. And then I was coming out into the water well where, see all this dust, all that sanding dust. I do 1 pass going this way, where I'm holding the sander literally just about like this at almost a 45-degree angle, and then I come out and I hold it up at roughly a 45-degree angle, And that is not only getting inside the water well in 2 passes. It does a very nice job of getting all of that stuff cleaned up. But I'm also getting this back edge here cleaned up really nice as well when I'm holding like this. So there, and then I could just kind of bring my sander out and up, and then I hit 1 pass on the edge here, and then you see me come down and I'm holding it flat or almost flat. It's kind of like working a rotary polisher. You want just I put a little bit of pressure on my outside edge, then I come out. So I'm doing this section right here in 2 passes. Or technically 3. I'm doing the lip part of it, then I do flat part and flat part with an overlap, and then I come out here and I do the outside lip right on the edge here. Because these wheels were in better shape than most of the ones I've been working on lately, I did not do 320 right here and right here. I did 320 on the face, on the actual lip itself, but I did 600 here and out here because I didn't need to get that aggressive. To make everything blend properly so that it all looks uniform, I'm just leaving 600 and 800 out here on the edge. And then I'll go over it with the DA. And then out here, I did the same process. Started up in the top, and then started lowering my sander down to get a nice smooth finish on the outside lip. And then what I did was I came up top and I held my sander in like this at kind of a backwards angle. And what that does is it fills this void in for me. So I get a nice smooth finish with no gouge marks or anything right in this area. And then while I'm up here, I do the outer bead and then in here. So that's kind of the process that I'm following. Now I'm about to switch over. I'm gonna put my interface pad on my sander and switch over to 800. And with the interface pad, because it's squishier, I can do these areas in like 2 passes and smooth everything out really nice, because it's able to cover more surface area. So I'll get all of this all done and then switch over to the DA. But I wanted to show you what the sanding for me looks like when I'm a little bit more than halfway done with my prep. And having your sanding be smooth the whole way through helps with your cutting process. So that's why we're trying not to get a bunch of jagged lines and everything else. We want everything to flow. We want it a smooth, glassy finish, and you can't have a glassy finish if you have ripples from your sanding, which is the main reason why, if you're going to go with a rotary sander, I highly advise either building yourself a wheel spinner or having somebody build one for you. This particular one was made by Joker Shine out in Illinois for me, probably 3-4 years ago now. It has more than made its money back for me in time spent on wheels. And I also have one that I still need to pick up down in Pennsylvania from MTG Contracting. That's Matt Green. He built an awesome stand for me that's adjustable on like a trailer jack, basically, and like a multi-position type of deal, so I can work in more comfortable positions a little bit better. So if anybody's interested in having him build you one, I can give you the information for that. But I do not rotary sand anything without having it spinning. It just creates way too many divots. You're removing a lot of material really fast. So with that being said, I'm going to switch everything over, get ready for my 800, and I'll be back with time lapse. All right, so I have recap 120, 320, 600, 800 rotary on the back wall. 120, 320, and 600 were all done with just the backing plate. The backing plate for the sander. And the 320 or the 800 was done with an interface pad on it. And I did 800 with the interface all the way around, all the way out, down in the water well, everything. Tried to get it up into the valve stem the best I could. That I usually end up blending by hand. But then I came back and did 800 on the DA with the interface pad on this area right here. And that's it. I was originally going to do it right in here, and I do normally do it right in this area to clean that all up. But for the sake of time today, I am not. So DA and 800, which is why that looks a lot more dull than that does, is two different patterns, sanding patterns. So this is all 800 finished all the way out to the edge. And now I'm gonna start cutting. So for my cut, now that I got everything set back up again, I've got, as usual, my DeWalt 849X. I'm gonna turn the speed up to somewhere around 3,000, between 3,000 and 35. I don't really need it to run wide open. And I've got my gray Hilsinger buff with my safety flanges. So this is what we're gonna use to cut. And I'm pairing that with Menzerna 439T, which is my standard cutting bar. Link will be below for anybody that wants to order the stuff. I get everything out of from Spectrum, Alberta, and they did just set up a US-based warehouse, so shipping times are a little bit faster, and I think the prices might be a little bit better. I'm not 100% sure, but I'll have the link below for anybody wanting to order what I'm using. And I'm gonna do the same thing with my wheel as when I was sanding. So I'm gonna start in the back wall, back here, get in between my holes, come in, do the inside lip here and into the studs. And then I'm going to work from the water well here out and finish out on the outer bead up here. So that's my process for sanding. That's my process for polishing. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Not everybody does it this way. This is the way that I do it. This is the way that I'm going to show you how to do it. And I'm not ever going to say that my way is the only way to do it, or the products that I use are the only products to ever use. It's not the case. As I've said before, there's more than one way to skin a cat in this game. This is just what's worked for me. And I'm hoping that somebody watching my videos will maybe follow along with what I'm doing, and it might help cut a little bit of a learning curve. Dang. Might help cut a little bit of a learning curve down from some of the other videos that are available online. I'm not saying that they're bad, and I sure have a lot to learn about how to record videos and what to show and everything, but there are a lot of videos available for people to learn with that are leaving out a lot of information that I think if I had known certain things when I was starting out, it would have helped me tremendously, and it would have cut a year or two off of my learning curve. So this is kind of how I do things. I'm going to do different videos as I go, as I run into different things that will hopefully show how to adapt a little bit, because I do have a process, but the process pretty much always stays the same, but the stuff that I use may change depending on what I'm working on. So I'm gonna get into cutting. We're gonna time lapse the cut, and I'll show you what the cut looks like after, and then we're gonna go into the color and the finish, just like I did with the steer wheel in the other video that I did. So the process is pretty much gonna be the same for everything. So I'm probably, once I do show you what the cut looks like, I will probably go ahead and just time lapse the rest of it all the way to the finish, and then show you the finished product afterwards. Okay, so I had to have my phone over where it actually has service in this Faraday box of a shop that I'm in. So I did not record the color step of this wheel, but I have it done, and I'm going to show you what that part looks like before we move into the finish. And for the finish, I'm going to live time it, so that you will actually be able to see the whole process front to back. It'll probably be 5-ish minutes long, maybe. I don't really know. The color and the finish take very, very little time once your sanding and your cutting is done. Those two things usually take the longest amount of time out of anything else on any project involving aluminum that I have ever touched. The sanding and the cutting is laying the foundation for what your finish is going to look like. So I always end up spending more time on them than anything else. So this is what we have now. This is colored. You can still see some of the pits. I told you we weren't going to get them all out. but they are a lot smaller now, finer than what they were originally. So the way I did this was the exact same way as my cut. So I started over here and I worked from the top edge of the hole all the way up to within probably a 1/4 inch of the bottom of this hole. I try not to catch the holes very much because it ends up jerking the buff and you snag this edge and then you get worn down edges, and I try to avoid it instead of trying to run right over top of it. So I always start here and work my way up, and then I go down into the water well and clean the bottom part of the hole, and I come up and I start doing this part, and then I go down into the water well and come back up. I do that all the way around. What you end up with is a compound line that's right about here in your finish. All right, because that's where you're stopping. So you stop your compound line there, you go down, you come back up. So the next part for me is to come back over here, which you may have seen me do in my cut. So now I'm working the top side on this side of the wheel, which is actually the bottom side on this side of the wheel, if that makes sense. If it doesn't, I'm sorry for your luck. But now you're gonna work, and I just do, like, you can see a little bit of a compound haze, just a touch from my color, but I work maybe 2 passes real quick off of this edge of the hole. And I work a couple passes and then come up and work a couple passes, and I do that all the way around. Then I come back to my center and I do my center lip here all the way around, hold it like this so the buff is about flat, and I do up, and that pretty much gets up to the bottom of the lug nut holes. And then I always come over to my left side because that's the side I'm more comfortable on, and I always do my final pass in the center around the lug nut holes that way. Then come down to the water well, because like I said, I always try to work from the inside out on wheels. So I come into my water well, I run 3 passes on the water well, come up around the valve stem and back down, and I go from holding the buff from about like this to, well, I start roughly, I would say maybe 45-degree angle-ish. So I'm running it like that, and then I reverse it so that I'm running it crossways at almost a 45, but the tail end of the buff is getting back along this bottom edge here. So I'm hitting like that, and then I bring it up, also hitting like this, and it's getting this inside part of the lip cleaned up real good. So I do that, and then for my color and my finish, I kind of reverse things a little bit, and I start on the outside bead, and I work my way in to this lip right here. So I'm holding the buff, and I'm just letting the wheel free spin at a slower speed, and I just slowly start bringing my buff in, raking occasionally, reapply compound, bring it in, run this way on this lip, and then curve it up, which usually takes about 3 passes. So I hold it here for all the way around, and then I bring it up at an angle for all the way around, and then I come up to the top for 1 pass all the way around. And then I just follow it in till I'm in the inside lip here. And that's pretty much my color. And you'll see here in just a few minutes, we're gonna do the finish. I applied my liquid polish with just a touch of mineral spirits before I did my color, which you can see still in the valve stem area. So I do not buff that out in between my color and finish. I leave it I leave the valve stem just like that and I hit it again. And what I'm doing is taking the applicator and I'm shoving it up under the underside of that valve stem to get that cleaned out the best I can. And then we'll hit it again between color and finish, and then it'll get buffed off with the final wipe down. So that stays left alone, and I try to use my finish, which is the mirror finish buff from Hilsinger, which is spinning at a slower speed so it can conform to this area a little bit more, and it acts as a blend a little bit, so it's not this huge glaring area that just looks like it's been hit with liquid polish. So you'll see that at the end of the video. I'm gonna turn everything around so that you can see clearly, the best that I can, and just pay attention a little bit to the sound of the machine when it's under a load, as I'm working it, and the way that I'm actually going about polishing, the method that I'm using for actually removing the liquid polish, which makes it, the liquid polish is going to make it a lot easier for you to see as I'm going around the wheel and taking that off. You'll be able to follow a lot easier as we go along. As always, at the end of the video, if you have any questions, pop in the comments. You're welcome to hit me up on Messenger, send me an email, do whatever you need to. I'm more than willing to help. I'm not always going to have all the answers, but maybe I can at least help give you a halfway decent start where you're not getting frustrated all the time. So just like I talked about before, I'm using the same process with this wheel as I've used with the other wheel that I've done on video here. So 439T with a gray Hilsinger buff, and then I think I ran that at 3,500 RPM. Then I switched over to the Hilsinger white untreated mirror finish buff, and P175, and I'm running that at 3,000 RPM for the color, wiping down with liquid polish in between, do the color step, and now I'm going to re-wipe everything with the liquid polish, just a thin layer, no mineral spirits on this round, just straight polish. And then I'm going to turn the machine down to about 1,200 RPM-ish, and I'm still using the P175. This is going to be our final pass. And then what I'm going to do is switch over to the Dremel. We're going to do the holes, wipe everything down, and then I'll bring you back and I will show you the final finish after the Dremel. Make sure to work my polish up into the valve stem area really good. On show wheels, we pull the valve stem out so that you don't end up with any crazy lines or anything like that. If somebody has really, really rough wheels that we aren't show finishing, I will take the Dremel and work that area with the Dremel a little bit, and then hand blend the best I can. Sometimes you use 4/0 steel wool to get in there with a little bit of liquid polish. because these wheels weren't in that bad a shape, I am able to kind of cut a little bit of a corner there and just kind of work it by hand with my applicator pad while I am doing the rest of my wipe down. And this wipe is basically just adding a little bit of sealer into the pores of the aluminum. This is part of the reason why I usually see about a year out of my polish jobs, where under normal circumstances with truck stop polish work, typically you're getting redone, or you're seeing that aluminum needs to be retouched every 4 weeks or so, usually once they start running in the rain. But between the Menzerna bars and the polish that I add in between, I have found that the pores of the aluminum stay sealed up pretty good. And I always give my customers aftercare instructions on how to actually take care of their polished aluminum, which is key for anybody really. And typically my customers are seeing the better part of a year. So for them, I'm usually retouching their trucks once, maybe twice. Sometimes in the spring, after winter's hit, we'll do a light sand and an acid wash to get the salt off and out of everything, because I've had issues with that before. That was a learning experience. It cost me a good chunk of money when you have to go back and redo something for a customer, but that's something that I'm not going to forget. And so I've changed the way that I do things. And now if I see any truck in the springtime, I acid wash everything, and I'll usually scuff it with 800 unless it's in immaculate shape. And then I'll just heavy cut, do my 3-step process with no sanding, but I still acid wash. So we do that, and then a lot of times I will see guys come back in the fall for what I call my winter prep packages, where we do the paint work, prep the paint, get a good coat of sealer on that, go through all the aluminum, get that all prepped. Typically in the fall, on a truck that I'm seeing once a year or twice a year, I will not sand in the fall. I'll usually scuff everything down in the spring and start fresh. And then in the fall, I'm just doing touch-up, where I go through my 3-step process with my sealer, and that amount of wax essentially on the polish job is helping get the aluminum, keep it shiny, keep the salt from impregnating all the way down into the pores and just ruining everything. As long as they keep it washed properly through the winter time, usually I see polish jobs come back in the spring and they're not completely trashed. So while I've explained that, the sealer's kind of sat on here a little bit. It's not completely dry or anything, which is what we want, but it's dried off enough to where it should buff off pretty easy. So here we go with the finish. 1200 RPM with the mirror finish buff from Spectrum. P175. So this is where I start working from the outside to that inner lip where the water well is. So you're just gonna see me start working real slow. If you pay attention to up here, you'll kind of be able to see the line that I'm following in the liquid polish as I work my way in. So I'm going to stay in the live time, and we're going to switch over to the Dremel. And I'm going to show you how I kind of work this process a little bit. So these wheels aren't horrible. So what I'm going to do is use a red Scotch ball this time. On the other wheel, I used a yellow. The red is about the equivalent of 320 grit. So I'm going to use this in my Dremel. I run the Dremel wide open. I think it's like 10,000 RPMs. And usually one Scotch ball will do one wheel. So they don't cost me a lot of money. I'll have the link in the description down below again, in case you didn't see the other video. They come in an assorted pack. There's 5 different colors for 5 different grits that you can use. But basically what I'm gonna do, I've got this all set up, and I'm gonna wipe the wheel down one more time with sealer. This is my final coat of wax, basically. And while that cures up, I go around and I zip out the holes. So bear with me, we got just a little bit longer to go. And then we'll do the final wipe down, and I'll show you the final product. And for those of you who may be curious and don't want to ask the question, the liquid polish or sealant stuff that I use is typically White Diamond. Sometimes I'll use Renegade Wicked as my final sealer. It does not take a lot to do this, especially the final pass. So I just put a little bit on there and I work it in really good. And then we let it dry up while we do the Dremel. Come back with a terry towel, buff it off, finish with a microfiber. Stay tuned. when I do the Dremel, I always start on my left and then I come back across and I finish on my right. So I'm only doing 1/2 of the hole at a time. And that way I'm not kind of overworking myself and potentially coming out into the polished finish. Which if you start doing this, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about a little bit. It can be a little tricky until you get used to it, but it makes the wheel look so much better, so it's worth it in the end. All right, so I hit the left side, or the bottom side of the hole on the one side, and I came back and hit the bottom side of the hole on the other side. Oh man, excuse me. One side, other side, that completes the hole. And then I come back down to the bottom, which you can't really see because I was working down here, but I took the Dremel bit and I cleaned up the bottom part of that pocket so that when you're sitting there staring at the wheel head on like this, the bottom side of the holes looked uniform, because I didn't really care for the way that they looked just from one side and the other. So I touched them up. So now what we're gonna do, now that the sealer has trapped the dust in it from doing the holes, now terry towel and microfiber, with terry towel first, and you can see over here, you can see this towel's already been used, but you see how the fibers are still nice and kind of plush. They're not all matted down and nasty where they're gonna scratch everything. So we're not going for 100% wipe down. We just want to try to get the kind of the majority of the polish off of there. I always tell people who ask that when you're wiping off polish with the terry towel, you want to use that first and try to shoot for getting like 70% of the polish residue off with your terry towel, so that that way the polish residue doesn't get caked up in your microfiber and cause a bunch of unnecessary scratches. I think we got most of that. Back wall, hit your holes real quick, because you're going to have a little bit of liquid polish in them yet. Flip the towel over to clean your edges off. weight of my hand, basically, and a lot of back and forth. It's not a lot of actual down pressure, but this is now what we have. So that's all cleaned up. Nice and uniform. If you look at the reflection of the holes out here, you'll see that there's no waves. You're not getting like this ripple effect in the metal. It's nice and smooth. And that right there is what the customer is going to be happy with. So now, what I do, so I'm going to turn that around and set it back up real quick so I can get this. Now that the wheel is finished, I have started doing these little stickers. I don't know if you can see that or not. Maybe. There we go. So all it is just my little logo. It's a little 1-inch round sticker. And this goes right where the original little round sticker for the Alcoa was. So in one of the other videos I had shown you how the triangle sticker is normally up here on this side of the date stamp. So the date stamp is right here, so you can still see 1615. So that's January 6th, 2015 is when the wheel was manufactured. And then the other sticker, the little round one, is usually right over here at the end of the date stamp. So I just take my little logo and I put it right on the wheel, right there. And that is a completed drive wheel. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate everybody's support. Everybody getting in the comments, and make sure that you're liking and following, subscribing down below. I will be trying to post links for products that I use in the descriptions as well, so that if you're interested in trying them yourself, you could go down and grab them. Thank you guys.